I listen to a lot of self-help podcasts. The ones with the face-meltingly positive messages that would convince you to gouge out your own eyes with a dull spoon if your workplace decided to shove them down your throat for professional development. One such topic that pops up for me occasionally and has been a fixation of mine is the growth mindset. Now, the world was first introduced to this concept by Dr. Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, The Psychology of Success, which was published in 2006. The extremely abbreviated premise is that we can inhabit two possible mindsets. The fixed mindset, in which we believe our talents and our capacities are largely innate and immutable. Intelligence is often considered as a popular example, but other characteristics can be similarly modeled. If our intelligence is not sufficient for a task, we will not be able to complete that task, regardless of effort. The growth mindset, conversely, is one in which we believe we can improve our skills over time and eventually overcome challenges that would be impossible in the present. Now, some models that characterize people do so horizontally. That is, each of us will be assigned into one bucket or another, and each bucket is different, but generally equal. Think of your MBTI personality type or your Hogwarts house. Other models represent stages of development and vertical growth, in which earlier stages are generally less advanced than later stages. The growth versus fixed mindset falls into the latter group, as pretty much everyone who talks about this subject will diagnose you with a woefully stagnant and shitty life if your mindset is fixed, while granting you nearly limitless potential if you have a growth mindset. And that's where most of the talks stop and my fascination begins. Everyone will tell you that you should have a growth mindset if you want to, grow. But no one tells you how to attain a growth mindset. Because, who's certainly not listening to TED Talks about flexing your empowerment to change your mindset? Do you know who's resisting the uncivil urge to slap you in the face every time you tell them that if they just try hard enough and keep trying, eventually they'll succeed? People with a fixed mindset. Everyone raving about the profound power of the growth mindset likely already has one and doesn't need to hear the message anyways. If you have a fixed mindset, you probably didn't even listen to those inspirational talks, and if you did, they most assuredly did not change your mindset. Some modern ideologies, like wokeism, aren't helping the matter either, as they create a lousy environment for growth, though this is perhaps a contentious topic for another time. We're told that society is broken. It is, and that only by fixing society can we fix ourselves. It is a terrible message to tell people that their only salvation is social change. We do need social change, but even more so, we need agency, which is also perhaps a topic to discuss in more detail another time. But I bring it up because the source of our woes is relevant here. Do you believe that your fixed mindset is an innate part of who you are? That just like your other immutable traits, your fixed mindset itself is also unchangeable? But consider that it wasn't even your mindset to begin with. It was created by society, just as society blames all sorts of challenges and inequities that we face upon external factors like discrimination. Mind you, I don't disagree with this conclusion. Humans are notoriously discriminatory. But of note here is the point that your fixed mindset is not inherently yours. It was given to you by these external sources. And in that case, you have the capacity to adopt a different mindset, though it might be challenging and require years of effort. But how can you adopt a growth mindset? First, forgive yourself if you don't already have one. We're all working against conditioning that's been ingrained in us over years or decades from whatever life we've lived until now. We all have some degree of external challenges, some of us much more than others, and these challenges demand our attention and make internal work difficult. Nonetheless, I've identified 3 factors that must be met in order to change your mindset, though this general method can be applied to almost any internal work. First, you need to believe that change is possible. While this sounds kind of dumb and circular, believing that change is possible isn't exactly the same thing as having a growth mindset. It is necessary, but not sufficient. If you don't believe change is possible, then internal work like meditation or therapy might help you to develop such skills as reframing or mindfulness, to help in separating emotional experiences from external realities. Number 2, you need resources. Everything in our world, unfortunately, has a cost. Now, for a personal development goal like figuring out this growth mindset thing, some of those costs might be less tangible. Think about things like energy or motivation. But often a lack of more tangible resources, like not having enough money for rent, can get in the way of procuring these necessary intangibles. Third, you need to have the will to make such a change. Look, we all have finite resources, both tangible and intangible, and opportunity cost is real. Do I want to work on improving my mindset, or my income, or my relationship with my mom, or my Harry Potter addiction? Because I can't possibly focus sufficiently on all of these at the same time. Generating the will to seriously address something like mindset may mean postponing work in other areas. Now, while these 3 steps for change are fairly intuitive and obvious, they're also somewhat vague. By vague, I mean not directly actionable, but I wanted to point them out for a couple of reasons. First, to recognize that internal changes can be hard. Changing your mindset is not so simple as changing your mindset. If it was, after all, you'd have done it years ago. If you struggle with figuring out how to be growth-oriented, pursuing this change can be very worthwhile. Just don't blame yourself if you're not there already, or if it takes a while to get there. Secondly, these 3 steps that I identified might help you find where the most likely roadblocks are that can be impeding your progress under your own personal circumstances. Whether it's in more foundational perspectives that you hold, or energy, or other resources, identifying what's holding you back from adopting a different mindset can help you focus your efforts in specific areas. Now, many motivational talks about the growth mindset oversimplify the issue. There are some instances in which a fixed mindset might be valuable. For example, in fields where proficiency is integral and mistakes have harsh consequences, such as for airline pilots or doctors, or under conditions of cognitive fatigue or stress. Now, removing variables, for example, if you're able to see aspects of yourself as fixed, then that conserves your attention by not forcing you to worry about things like what could I learn or what could I do better. While I can't propose spending an entire lifetime with a fixed mindset, we can see that it's not simply a matter of which mindset to hold, but when to hold each one. The growth mindset prioritizes experimentation and learning. As an example, when playing laser tag for the first time, as a middle-aged adult, I performed terribly in the first game because I focused on understanding how everything worked. What was the time delay between shots? After being hit, how long were you invulnerable and unable to fire before you essentially respawned? What was the weapon range? Because I focused on learning how the game worked, I was not very helpful to my team at all. But I was an absolute menace in the next game, having figured out the gameplay mechanics in a bit more detail than many of the other players who were playing with a presumably fixed mindset. That is, not really expecting to get better over the short duration of our playtime. And this example really highlights the difference between the fixed and the growth mindset. The growth mindset is focused on getting better eventually, at the cost of performance in the present. That's why I was a liability for my first laser tag game, because I was trying to grow, not perform, not score the most kills. If the consequences of failure are dire, it may be better if I consider my abilities to be fixed, to know exactly what I am capable of, and to do the job without experimenting. In the long term, this will lead to stagnation, but in the short term, it will maximize performance. So rather than being in growth mindset all the time, we should instead learn to be more adept at determining when to grow and when to be fixed. Unfortunately, determining when we should learn and when we should perform is complicated and situational. Developing the belief, the resources, and the will to work towards a growth mindset is also largely internal work. While we can be guided or inspired by others, it's something we ultimately have to figure out for ourselves. This is why most of the arguments glorifying the growth mindset just invigorate the already motivated rather than stirring the unmotivated to action. but hopefully I've presented a new perspective that might convert a few people. And more importantly, I want to communicate that changing one's mindset isn't always simple or easy. Be kind to everyone, even those who don't like the growth mindset message or aren't in a place where such a process is valuable to them.